Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. We're moving to the next stage of the pandemic, and as the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. Here are tonight's news. Health workers and the military clapped and salute the 78 OFWs who recovered from COVID-19. Reporting from the Philippine arena, here's Erlo Bringas.
Almost 80 patients of COVID-19 here in Philippine Arena Mega Quarantine Facility is now recovered. But the good news there, they can now go home to hug their families. The medical workers gave discharged patients a heartwarming round of applause as they happily returned home after a victorious fight against the coronavirus. Maligaya Development Corporation COO Attorney Glicerio GP Santos IV and the National Task Force Deputy Chief Implementer Vince Tison joined together in their efforts to send the discharged patients back home. Survivors and their families expressed their gratitude to the medical workers for their dedicated services in the months-long fight against the deadly coronavirus.
Sobrang saya po. Sobrang saya po kasi makakasama ko ng family ko almost 2 months na nagstay po ako sa quarantine area. Ayun po, salamat po.
Sobrang masaya. Kahit na dumaan sa hirap, masaya. Salamat sa mga
Nagpapasalamat po tayo, naging negative na po tayo. At sa mga tao nakadadanas po ng depresyon sa quarantine, unang-una po dapat manalig lang po tayo sa kanya. Maraming salamat po sa Philippine Arena, sa Iglesia ni Cristo, sa pamamahala nila. Dahil pinahiram po nila ito yung ganitong pasilidad. At maraming salamat din po sa inyo. Sana suportahan niyo po kami mga frontliner.
A total of 78 overseas Filipino workers and frontliners at the Philippine Arena Mega Quarantine Facility have recovered from the virus after undergoing treatment. Secretary Dizon said the Philippine Arena Mega Quarantine Facility registered the highest number of COVID-19 recoveries inside the country's government facilities.
Marami sa kanila, majority sa kanila, mga OFWs natin na nag-positive, pero ngayon negative na sila. Talaga pong nahirapan ang gobyerno lalo na ng una, pero pinilit po talaga natin. Makikita natin na kung magtutulong-tulungan tayong lahat, talagang makikita natin yung resulta at matutulungan natin ang ating mga kababayan, lalo na yung mga OFWs natin, at finally makakauwi na sila.
Some of these patients are OFWs who went through mandatory quarantine.
Actually, this facility is a shelter for everyone who needs help, no, na dun sa COVID. Dito hindi lang tayo nag-stay dito, nagko-quarantine. I make sure na they feel at home, they feel safe. At the same time, we conduct some lectures na naiintindihan nila yung ano ba yung problema.
As of today, the government can now accommodate 42,000 tests per day. Secretary Dizon says the government will double their efforts to increase the number of COVID-19 tests for the possible case of COVID-19. They are also ready to aid overseas Filipino workers returning to their hometowns.
Pero hindi doon humihinto ang trabaho. Hindi doon humihinto ang ating ginagawa. Kasi kailangan natin ngayong itaas yung efficiency o yung capability ng bawat laboratorio na ma-maximize niya ang kanyang capacity. Kailangan mapaiksi pa natin yan. 5 days maximum ang target natin. No? So talagang magtatrabaho tayo ng maigi para talaga lalo na yung mga parating nating mga OFW in the next few days and weeks, ay hanggang 5 days lang ay makakauwi na sila.
Katulong kami na makabawi sa mga bayani natin, mga OFW. Nararamdaman natin ang aksyon ng gobyerno na kung ano man ang kailangan nila na ipoprovide kaagad. Kahit babahagya, makabahagi po sana tayong lahat para naman makabawi tayo sa ating mga OFW.
Salamat tayo talaga ng malaki sa Iglesia ni Cristo under the leadership ni Ka Eduardo Manalo kundi dahil sa kanilang generosity sa pagpapagamit sa atin ng libre nitong Philippine Arena, magkukulang talaga tayo ng mga facilities para alagaan lalo na yung mga kababayan natin na magpa-positive sa COVID-19.
Speechless ako sa INC, no? Kasi sabi ko nga, the facility, the point na pinahiram nyo sa amin to, the assistance, lahat ng kayang maitulong, masuportahan itong kahit hindi iglesia. May Muslim kami dito, all religions nandito. So walang pinili, walang race, walang nationality, basta as long as nangailangan, dinala dito. This is a heaven for COVID patients na undergoing emotional distress, nahihirapan sila. Malaking bagay sa kanila yung nagkaroon sila ng second family.
Kamay sa puso! Okay! Wow!
The task force said they will always send their gratitude to the Iglesia ni Cristo for helping the government to fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. Reporting from Manila for Eagle News, Earl Ringas, we live in interesting times.
Okay, the World Health Organization changed its advice on face masks amid the coronavirus pandemic. Joining us live from Geneva, Switzerland is Jim Hipolito. Hello, Jim.
Hi, Alma. Yes, it's true. The World Health Organization Friday changed its advice on face masks amid the coronavirus pandemic, saying that they should be worn in places where the virus is widespread and physical distancing is difficult.
Today, WHO is publishing updated guidance on the use of masks for control of COVID-19. This guidance is based on evolving evidence and provides updated advice on who should wear a mask, when it should be worn, and what it should be made of. In areas with community transmission, we advise that people aged 60 years or over, or those with underlying conditions, should wear a medical mask in situations where physical distancing is not possible. In light of evolving evidence, WHO advises that governments should encourage the general public to wear masks where there is widespread transmission and physical distancing is difficult. Our updated guidance contains new information on the composition of fabric masks based on academic research requested by WHO. Masks are not a replacement for physical distancing, hand hygiene, and other public health measures. Masks are only of benefit as part of a comprehensive approach in the fight against COVID-19.
Yeah, the WHO maintained its recommendation that people who are sick with COVID-19 symptoms should stay at home. And if it is absolutely necessary for them or their contacts to leave home, they should wear a medical mask. As before, those caring for an infected person at home should wear a medical mask when in the same room. And health workers should wear medical masks plus protective equipment when dealing with suspected or confirmed COVID-19 patients. But in an update affecting healthcare workers, the WHO now recommends that in areas with widespread virus transmission, all people working in clinical sections of a health facility should wear medical masks, not just those dealing with patients with COVID-19. Meanwhile, Alma, an update here in Geneva, Switzerland. The Swiss government said it will accelerate plans to open its borders, allowing people traveling from all European Union countries and Britain to enter from June 15. Swiss authorities had already announced in mid-May plans to reopen the country's borders with its immediate neighbors, except Italy, on that date, and to the rest of the Schengen passport-free area by early July. But with the most European countries appearing to gain significant control over their COVID-19 outbreaks, Burns said in a statement that the epidemiological situation made a faster and broader opening possible. The non-European Union members said it would now be possible to welcome travelers from the bloc along with those from fellow members of the European Free Trade Association, or EFTA, Norway, Iceland, and Liechtenstein. Alma?
All right. Thank you very much, Jim, for your updates there in Geneva. Take care and stay healthy, stay alert. Thank you.
Reporting live from Switzerland is Jim Hippolito for EBC Geneva Bureau, and we live in interesting times.
All right, let's head on over to Ireland, where the Prime Minister has announced an easing of lockdown measures. Joining us live from Ireland is Rowena Bianca Arino. Hello, Bianca.
Hi, Alma. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. So, an easing of lockdown measures, or maybe have been accelerated, actually. So, your updates?
Yes, so Ireland will dramatically accelerate its plan to ease coronavirus lockdown restrictions in the coming days. Prime Minister Leo Varadkar said in the following press conference. Let's listen.
Today, I can confirm that it is safe to move to phase 2 of the plan to reopen our country, starting on Monday. This has been made possible because of the considerable sacrifices that you have made to restrict the spread of the virus and protect others. Thanks to your perseverance in pushing back COVID-19, I'm also announcing an acceleration of the roadmap. Over the last few months, fear has exerted a kind of gravity pulling us down. But now we find there is hope lifting us up again. During this emergency, we've suffered as a country, lost loved ones, and changed the way that we work and live. We are making progress. We are heading in the right direction. And we have earned the right to be hopeful about the future again. From Monday, groups of up to 6 people will be able to meet with each other indoors or outdoors once they keep 2 meters apart. And groups of up to 15 people can meet for outdoor sporting activities. Solitary workers can return to their workplaces, and people who can maintain a physical distance from others on a phased basis. It's important that people continue to avoid unnecessary travel. So our message today and for the next 3 weeks is to stay local. We recognise the difficulty that the 5-kilometre travel restrictions are having, especially for people living in rural Ireland. So from Monday, people can travel anywhere within their own county or up to 20 kilometres from their homes.
So more workplaces will open and household visits will be permitted from Monday in line with the government plan to reopen the public announced in May. However, an escalation of the scheme will see citizens allowed to travel across their county of residence or up to 20 kilometers from home. All shops will also be permitted to reopen whilst the final stage of the roadmap to end lockdown in place since 28th of March will be brought forward from August to July. Playgrounds will reopen while the government now intends to allow hotels, restaurants, and bars serving food to resume trade on June 29. Prime Minister said, "We are making progress. We are heading in the right direction and we have earned the right to be hopeful about the future again." Ireland has suffered 1,664 deaths from the coronavirus, according to official figures. Recorded deaths peaked at 77 in a single day in April, but by Thursday that figure had fallen to just 5. The Republic last Monday registered its first day without COVID-19 deaths in more than 2 months, 1 week after entering the first phase of its plan to leave lockdown. "We proved we can suppress the virus, but now we do face another test," said Health Minister Simon Harris. "We must prove we can live alongside it and keep it weak at the same time." The easing includes provisions for shops to hold staggered opening hours and social distancing measures to remain in place. "We must remain careful, cautious, vigilant, and together," Harris has added. Finance Minister Paschal Donohoe announced Friday that a government wage subsidy scheme enacted when the nation entered lockdown will be extended until the end of August. Today, €1.37 billion has been paid to 500,000 employees, but he warned this support cannot last forever, and he expected to see a continued decline in reliance on the scheme. Back to you, Alma.
Okay. So, Bianca, how are the members of the cabinet or the nation supporting the plans to reopen the economy of Ireland?
So, the Taoiseach Prime Minister Leo Varadkar said Ireland has earned its right to be hopeful about the future again. Mr. Varadkar said the third and fourth final phase will take effect from the June 29th and July 20th, respectively, and would be redefined in the coming weeks in a process led by the National Public Health Emergency Team. People will be able to travel within their own counties from Monday, and the domestic tourism industry will reopen from June 29th in an effort to salvage some of the summer season. However, in recommending that Ireland progress to the second phase for Monday and accelerating the lifting of restrictions, the National Public Health Emergency Team warned that stricter measures may need to be reintroduced if there was an upsurge in cases of COVID-19. In a letter sent on Thursday to Minister for Health Simon Harris, Dr. Tony Holohan and the Chief Medical Officer said it was impossible to predict with certainty what the future trajectory of the COVID-19 disease will be in Ireland. The emergency team said the easing of measures has the potential to increase the risk of transmission of infection, and concerns were raised that workplaces had the potential to become foci for new clusters as public health measures were eased. The acceleration in reopening came after two cabinet meetings on Thursday night and Friday morning, with ministers choosing to deviate from the advice of the team on two issues: the decision to allow people travel within their counties from Monday and to allow shopping centers open with restrictions on June 15th. The Taoiseach has said he wants to lift the 14-day quarantine requirement for people arriving into Ireland from other countries, which have been successful in tackling the virus, effectively allowing Irish people to go on foreign holidays to certain destinations. But it is not yet clear from when this might apply. Dr. Holohan's emergency team would develop some guidance around the 2-meter social distancing rules for the hospitality sector during periods of low transmission. Queen of Fall leader Michael Martin welcomed the changes, particularly the easing of restriction on travel, while Sinn Féin leader Mary Lou McDonald said the acceleration was great news all around. Mr. Harris said everyone had a role to play in ensuring the country could safely find a way to live alongside coronavirus. Health Service Executive Chief Paul Reid said now was the time for strengthened personal vigilance, such as doing the small hygiene things very well. Minister for Finance Pascal Donoghue and Minister for Social Protection Regina Doherty also announced on Friday that the wage subsidy scheme, which is subsidizing almost 500,000 workers, and the pandemic unemployment payment, which Ms. Donoghue said provided help to 600,000 people, would continue until the end of the pandemic. Back to you, Alma.
All right, very good. Thank you so much, Bianca, for your update. Thank you, EBC Ireland Bureau.
Thank you, Alma. Everyone, Bianca Arino, correspondent in the Republic of Ireland, and we live in interesting times.
To Japan now, Dennis Du joins us live. Dennis, a man has been arrested on suspicion of attempting to molest children there by trying to conduct virus tests on them. Dennis?
Yes, Alma, good evening. Yeah, here in Japan, a 23-year-old man from Kobe attempted to molest a group of young children by fooling them that they need to be tested for the coronavirus by touching them. According to a local police in the area, Tani Masahiro works in Awaji City, went near Tarumi Ward on the evening of March 24th and convinced some young girls and boys between 6 and 10 years old he wanted to test them of the coronavirus infection by just touching them, and they need not worry because it's injection-free. The children quickly ran away afterwards. Police soon identified the molester through a footage from a surveillance camera, and Tani was arrested June 3 after parents reported about the incident. Meanwhile, in Odawara, Kanagawa Prefecture, an old woman, 73 years old, was arrested for strangling her husband, 83, to death. According to police reports, the wife Ikeda Teruko killed her husband Yoichi by strangling him with face mask strings at their home on Friday just after midnight. Sankei News said one of their two sons called the emergency hotline 110. The police later quoted that the old woman tired from looking after her old husband. In other news, the Tokyo Metro Company opened the Toranomon station located along the complex of high-rise buildings, and it's near a 52-story skyscraper, the Toranomon Mori Tower. This is the first station along Hibiya Line since 1964. This station is equipped with safety preventive measures, doors to protect passengers from slipping onto the tracks. That's the latest for now. Back to you, Alma.
Thank you, Dennis, for your updates. Thank you, EBC Japan Bureau.
Reporting live from Tokyo, Japan, this is Dennis Lu. We live in interesting times.
Disturbing footage filmed by WBFO NPR reporter Mike Desmond shows an elderly man being pushed to the ground by police officers in riot gear in Niagara Square, Buffalo. And we want to warn you on the graphic images you're about to see. Take a look. As police officers walk past the man, he is seen bleeding from his head or bleeding from the right ear. The two officers who pushed him were suspended without pay. Members of the public shout at police to tell them to get help. Now, police had said in a statement that he tripped and fell. The New York governor said prosecutors should consider charging the officers. Now, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo spoke about the recent suspension of the Buffalo police officers that you just saw, who were caught on video pushing an older man down to the ground. The cops were suspended without pay after the 75-year-old protester suffered a head injury. Let's listen in.
This is Buffalo, New York yesterday. I just spoke with Mr. Gugino on the phone, who is that gentleman, who thankfully is alive. But you see that video, and it disturbs your basic sense of decency and humanity. Buffalo situation, I want to applaud Mayor Byron Brown. Mayor of Buffalo suspended the police officers yesterday immediately, and I believe the district attorney is looking into it from a possible criminal liability point of view, and I applaud the district attorney for moving quickly. I was sick to my stomach. Sick to my stomach. It was the same feeling I've had for 90 of the past nights when I would get the death total from coronavirus. I would physically get sick to my stomach. And when I saw the video, I got sick to my stomach. Not to be overly graphic, but that is the answer to your question. I think Mayor Brown was 100% right in suspending the police officers last night. I think he acted quickly and appropriately. The firing is then a contractual collective bargaining question, right? How do you go from suspension to firing by that contract and the process? But I would say I think the city should pursue firing, and I think the district attorney should look at the situation for possible criminal charges.
The United States braced for massive weekend protests against racism and police brutality as outrage soared over the latest law enforcement abuses against demonstrators that were caught on camera. Now, Joe Biden, the former vice president, the presumptive Democratic nominee for November's election, called President Trump's comments frankly despicable as thousands took to streets across America for a 10th straight day of anti-racism demonstrations. Take a look.
George Floyd's last words, "I can't breathe. I can't breathe," have echoed all across this nation and quite frankly around the world. For the president to try to put any other words in the mouths of George Floyd, I frankly think is despicable. And the fact that he did so on the day when black unemployment rose, Hispanic unemployment rose, black youth unemployment skyrocketed, tells you everything you need to know about this man and what he really cares about. I was disturbed, however, to see the president crowing this morning, basically hanging a mission accomplished banner out there, when there's so much more work to be done. So many Americans are still hurting.
What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now! What do we want?
With protests over last week's police killing of George Floyd, an unarmed black man, surging into a second weekend, President Trump sparked fresh controversy by saying it was a great day for Floyd. Massive street demonstrations are set for Saturday, including in Washington, where tens of thousands of people are expected. Also on Saturday, a remembrance for Floyd will be held in Rayford, North Carolina, the state where he was born, following an initial ceremony in Minneapolis that was held on Thursday. The protest, sparked by a police officer kneeling on Floyd's neck for almost 9 minutes as he pleaded for his life, took place amid a roiling controversy over officers' use of force against largely peaceful demonstrators. Meanwhile, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau took a knee during an anti-racism demonstration as he joined a crowd of protesters gathered in front of the Parliament in Ottawa. Take a look. Earlier, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau appeared to be at a loss for words. That was on Tuesday, pausing for about 20 seconds when pressed for his thoughts on U.S. President Donald Trump's threat of military mobilization against violent U.S. protests. Again, let's take a look.
Been reluctant to comment on the words and actions of the U.S. president, but we do have Donald Trump now calling for military action against protesters. We saw protesters tear gas yesterday to make way for a presidential photo op. I'd like to ask you what you think about that, and if you don't want to comment, what message do you think you're sending?
We all watch in horror and consternation what's going on in the United States. It is a time to pull people together, but it is a time to listen. It is a time to learn what injustices continue despite progress over years and decades. But it is a time for us as Canadians to recognize that we too have our challenges, that Black Canadians and racialized Canadians face discrimination as a lived reality every single day.
Meanwhile, demonstrators faced off with police in Rhode Island as protests against racism and police brutality go into a second weekend. Some officers took a knee and hugged the protesters in solidarity. Take a look.
go back. Let's go back.
I believe it truly may be more violent, but at the same and more stay safe. But as far
We understand that there's people in the crowd that aren't happy with maybe policing in America and maybe even the Providence Police specifically. But regardless, we have a job to do, or at least we perceive we do, to help them exercise their First Amendment right. If it's peaceful, all the more better. After the peaceful protest, if there are people that have come down here for different reasons, well then we that's the second half of our plan, which is we intend on keeping order and maintain order in the city.
My impression of the movement is it's humbling to know that a lot of people support and that people are coming out and doing their due diligence to make a difference, to make a change, and I feel like that's what needs to happen.
Some of the early protests were marred by rioting and looting, but they have been mostly peaceful since then. Curfews have been lifted in Washington, Los Angeles, and other cities, but New York's is due to run for the next 3 nights. Even the state of Hawaii, in the middle of the Pacific, is not immune to the ongoing unrest happening all over the U.S. and in other parts of the world. Although demonstrations have been generally peaceful, authorities there are not taking any chances and are currently dispelling rumors that encourage violence. Here's a recap of recent events produced by our very own Hawaii Bureau. Tens of thousands of Australians defied government calls to stay at home Saturday by spilling onto the streets for Black Lives Matter protests in major towns and cities across the city and the country.
Here for George Floyd. We are here for justice. We are here for ourselves, and we are here to be peace.
Marchers in Sydney, Melbourne, and elsewhere rejected arguments from law enforcement and conservative leaders that mass protests could fuel the spread of coronavirus. A court on Friday declared the Sydney protests illegal on health grounds, although the ruling was overturned by an appeals court minutes before the march was due to start. The Sydney march was largely peaceful, although one All Lives Matter counter-protester was taken away by police. Australia has seen a sustained drop in the number of COVID-19 cases, but social distancing rules remain in force and mass gatherings are not permitted. Protesters in Melbourne were warned they could face fines for attending a rally if social distancing was not observed, although police appeared not to be enforcing those rules. The day before the protest, Prime Minister Scott Morrison had urged people to stay home. He admitted there was more to be done to address Indigenous inequality, but he rejected parallels with the United States. And a small group of Black Lives Matter protesters took a knee for several minutes in London's Trafalgar Square to protest the killing of George Floyd. Take a look.
I knew because I matter. I knew because we matter. Not after the death, not after the crime, but we matter because we exist. And yet they're expected to die at a disproportionate rate.
3 of the 4 Minneapolis police officers who arrested Floyd for allegedly passing a counterfeit bill made their first court appearance to face charges of aiding and abetting his murder. Bail was set at $1 million each. The 4th policeman, Derek Chauvin, has been charged with second-degree murder and appeared before a judge last week. Meanwhile, 3 police officers have been arrested in the Mexican state of Jalisco over the death of a man taken into custody for allegedly breaking coronavirus restrictions, according to authorities. Take a look. Under arrest over the death of 30-year-old Giovanni Lopez last month is a municipal police chief in Guadalajara and another middle-ranking officer, according to state prosecutor Gerardo Solis. The arrests follow riots in the state capital, Guadalajara, after protesters had gathered to demand justice over Lopez's death. At least 28 people were arrested after protesters set police vehicles alight and attacked the headquarters of the state government. One police officer suffered burns that we saw earlier. Authorities said Lopez had been detained for administrative misconduct, and they denied claims he had been arrested for not wearing a mask in public. Mexico's President Andrés Manuel López Obrador mourned the death of the construction worker on Friday and said his government condemned the authoritarian actions. Amnesty International on Friday condemned the incident and said Lopez's death in police custody is a serious symptom of the misuse of force used by the authorities and the widespread use of torture. Mexican film director Guillermo del Toro, who is from Guadalajara, also condemned the killing. Jalisco Governor Enrique Alfaro accused the federal government of being behind the disturbances on Thursday, but President López Obrador denied the allegation. Mexico has recorded over 105,000 infections from the coronavirus, with nearly 13,000 deaths. Eagle News will be right back.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB. Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
In other news, French forces have killed the leader of Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, or AQIM, Algerian Abdelmalek Drocdel in Mali. French Defense Minister Florence Parly said on Friday. Now, Drocdel was killed on Thursday in the northwest Mali town of Tessalit. Many of his close associates were also neutralized, according to Parly. Parly said Abdelmalek Drocdel, member of Al-Qaeda's ruling committee, commanded the whole of the jihadist groups in North Africa and the Sahara, including Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin, or JNIM, an umbrella group of the Al-Qaeda affiliates. AQIM stands from a group started in the late 1990s by radical Algerian Islamists who in 2007 formally subscribed to Al-Qaeda's ideology. The group, formerly known as the Salafist Group for Preaching and Combat, has bases in northern Mali, from where it regularly carries out attacks and abductions of Westerners in the sub-Saharan Sahel zone. France also claimed on Friday to have captured a leader of the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara group, which carries out frequent attacks over Niger's western borders. Last month was the warmest May on record, and carbon dioxide levels also hit a new high despite the economic slowdown from COVID-19, according to the World Meteorological Organization. They said this on Friday in an urgent appeal for member states to renew their efforts to tackle climate threats. And the appeal coincides with the World Environment Day, celebrated annually on June 5, and a warning that warmer temperatures and higher greenhouse gas concentrations will have a major impact on biodiversity, socio-economic development, and human well-being. Let's listen in.
Everybody, as we all know, the global community is coming together today to celebrate World Environment Day. Unfortunately, coinciding with World Environment Day, we have important new data which shows that the causes and the indicators of climate change have again reached new heights. May 2020 was the warmest May on record, according to one European dataset, and carbon dioxide levels at a benchmark observing station also set a new record. This will have a major impact on biodiversity and nature, which is the theme of World Environment Day, and obviously, as we know, on socio-economic development and human well-being. WMO Secretary General Petri Talas and other UN and world leaders have repeatedly stressed that the industrial and economic slowdown from COVID-19 is not a substitute for sustained and coordinated climate action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And as I said, unfortunately, carbon dioxide concentrations measured at the Mauna Loa observing station in Hawaii reached a new record in May. It was a seasonal peak, so we're not saying this is going to be the global average figure for the whole year, but this one particular observing station reached a seasonal peak of 417.1 parts per million of carbon dioxide in May. This is the highest monthly reading ever recorded, and it was taken by scientists from the US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the Scripps Institute of Oceanography. There's been a lot of talk about COVID-19 leading to a fall in emissions. And I would say, once again, emissions and concentrations are two different things. Concentrations are what remains in the atmosphere after CO2 has been absorbed by the ocean and by the biosphere, and it stays in the atmosphere for hundreds of years. We do see a seasonal peak every year, it's normally in April, May, before vegetation has grown back to absorb CO2 in the northern hemisphere. But as I said, it is, it's not good news what we are reporting. In consequence, because of rising CO2 concentrations, temperatures are rising. May was the warmest May on record. This is according to the Copernicus Climate Change Service, which is operated for the European Union. It was 0.63 degrees Celsius warmer than the average May from 1981 to 2010. The most above average temperatures were recorded over parts of Siberia, where they were up to 10 degrees Celsius above average. And that is absolutely huge. It's breathtaking. It shattered records. Alaska and Antarctica were also warm. The consequences of this, it's not just temperatures. Temperatures are part of the story. But as we know, climate change has a major impact on biodiversity and on the oceans, which are absorbing the vast majority of carbon dioxide. World Oceans Day follows World Environment Day. It's on Monday, on the 8th of June. The theme is innovation for a sustainable ocean. And again, unfortunately, we are seeing ocean heat is at record levels. We're seeing very, very high levels of deoxygenation, of acidification, and sea level rise is continuing unabated.
Meanwhile, June's full moon, also known as a strawberry moon, since it occurs during strawberry season, rises over the British capital, London. The astrological phenomenon known as a penumbral lunar eclipse occurs when the Earth comes between the Sun and the Moon, thereby casting a faint shadow on the Moon. Now, this eclipse makes the full moon look slightly darker on part of its surface, although only some portions of the world in Asia, Australia, Europe, and Africa can see it. The moon will appear full until early Sunday morning. The Iglesia Ni Cristo in New Zealand conducted a door-to-door aid to humanity amid the pandemic. Greg Besa with the details.
Was in lockdown for a month to fight against the spread of COVID-19. It was proven effective in containing the virus, but at the expense of the economy. When the economic consequences of such tough measure have become evident in the lives of many people in this country, members of the Iglesia Ni Cristo Church of Christ have shown once more their love, compassion, and generosity to others, particularly those people whose sources of livelihood were affected by COVID-19 crisis, most of whom were migrant workers. As New Zealand is on track in eliminating COVID-19, the government is gradually easing its movement restrictions. Yet, limitations on gathering size are still in place to prevent any possible outbreak due to failure to follow social distancing measures. The continuing size restriction on large gatherings did not prevent nor discourage the members of the church all over New Zealand to hold their Aid to Humanity undertaking. Through the supervision of the Felix Y. Manalo Foundation, the charitable arm of the church, they conducted a door-to-door distribution of bags of grocery items to those who were deemed in great need, many of whom were migrant workers. So inspired in manifesting their unity with the call of the church administration to help others in distress, members of the church visited the residential places of the intended beneficiaries as they handed over to them the assistance in accordance to the social distancing guidelines for those they know and do not know, and hygiene measures set forth by the government.
And this is indeed timely, for many people are affected by the economic crisis brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. Through the leadership of our executive minister, we members of the Iglesia Ni Cristo conducted this Aid to Humanity activity to extend our help to our fellow men. This is also in compliance with the commandment of God recorded in Proverbs 3:27, that says, whenever you possibly can, do good to those who need it. As what we witnessed, our brothers and sisters in the faith were so joyful as they go to the respective houses of the recipients of goodwill bags and boxes, because they are driven by their genuine concern and love to our fellow men. And that is what we've learned from our executive minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo, as he leads the entire church in this holy endeavor and extending aid and a helping hand to those who are in.
Much as the members of the church are always ready to extend assistance to the needy, through the dynamic leadership of the church executive minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo, authorities concerned have recognized and appreciated their act of kindness, generosity, and compassion amid COVID-19 crisis.
Kia ora, I'm Campbell Barry, Mayor of Lower Hutt. I just want to take a quick moment to say thank you for all the hard work you've been doing in supporting our city. The project you and your fellow church members undertook, Aid to Humanity, is what Lower Hutt is all about. Playing our part in New Zealand's team of 5 million and helping out those in need within our communities. COVID-19 may have kept us physically distant, but it's work like yours that brings us closer together. He tangata, it's all about the people, and thank you again. I wish you all the best, and keep up all the good work and hard work in our communities. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Magandang araw po sa inyo lahat. I commend the recent activity launched by the Iglesia Ni Cristo, or Church of Christ, here in Wellington. Since New Zealand has started to ease its restrictions under Alert Level 2, they were able to go door to door to give goodie bags with food and other items to our kababayans in need. This act of kindness is a wonderful example of the bayanihan spirit shown by Filipino community groups here in New Zealand. Ngamihi, maraming salamat po.
On behalf of the Philippine Overseas Labor Office in New Zealand, I congratulate the Iglesia Ni Cristo Church of Christ on their continuing effort to reach out to fellow Filipinos here in New Zealand through their Aid to Humanity program. This humanitarian endeavor of the church, which is done simultaneously in all parts of the world, has touched the hearts, especially of people who are truly in need. It is through this altruism that the Church has been distinctly known with the liberality with which it extends help, care, and compassion to the poor. This act of generosity finds greater meaning in the face of the present global health crisis, when the very livelihood of ordinary people is under.
As COVID-19 cases soars across the globe, leading medical experts and authorities are unable to tell nor predict when this pandemic will end. But members of the Iglesia ni Cristo Church of Christ here in New Zealand and all over the world will never stop doing good to others whenever they possibly can, no matter what the situation of their surroundings may be. From Hat City, Wellington Region, New Zealand, this is Greg Besa. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Greg. In time of physical and emotional distance, we give importance to the unsung service delivered by our frontliners. Our news correspondents positioned all over the world. Without them, we would not have the eagle-eye focus on the facts of this pandemic and its continuing repercussions on our lives. To our international correspondents, thank you for staying in touch with our viewers. Stay safe, protect yourselves and others. Good night. I'm Alma Angeles. We live in interesting times.